your own beingness that you have developed. And but the image that was given to me to give to you is that that it is very similar, at least the image is very similar to someone who is in a canoe going down a river in a jungle, where you are got this smooth, wide river with blue skies and dense jungle on either side, and it's beautiful. And you're just rowing gently down there, just kind of humming a little song. Row, row, row your boat. Gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. And you can look into your past as far back as you can till the last bend. You can examine pretty well. In other words, you could see a certain distance back that you could remember real well, but when it goes around the bend, you can't see anymore. And so you could look in the back at so far, but then you can't see very far back, and you can't see as the bends get further and further and further back down that river, you know, the less and less and less can you remember where you were, because we're pretty much a centralized consciousness. And you can see ahead into the future up until the next bend, and then you can't see around that bend, so you don't have any idea what's coming. You can kind of tell what's coming in your future a little ways, but that's about it. So we have this short little thing. And you're just going down there having a good old time. Life is great. Your higher self is kind of like a big bird flying up over the top of your canoe. You might say like an eagle flying up there, coasting along. From that fourth dimensional point of view, if you want to see the third dimension as the surface of the earth and the fourth dimension is this higher view, that aspect of yourself can see a lot further than you can. It can look back along the river and see all the bends really precisely of your past for a long, long, long ways. It does have a limit. Higher self does have a limit, just like you do, but it's expanded like crazy, and it can see much further. And it can see ahead in your future a long ways, but it also has a limit. There are higher selves to higher selves to higher selves to higher selves until you get to God. And so your higher self flying up here can see real well, and you're down there just floating along, and the higher self comes to you, the bird comes to you and says, you need to get out of your canoe, go over to the side over here, and walk your canoe through the forest. And you're going, walk my canoe through the forest? Are you crazy? This thing weighs about 200 pounds. You know, you're thinking to yourself all these thoughts, that's stupid and dumb and everything else like that. But you do it. Reluctantly, you go over to the edge and you haul this canoe through the forest and over these logs and drag it here and all the way through this thing, which is called following your higher self. And you go down there about 2 miles. When you look back to where right behind the bend that you couldn't see, you look up and you see this 500 or 600 foot waterfall coming straight down. And you realize, wow, if I hadn't have done that, I would be mashed potatoes on the rocks down there. And so often, in my own experience, this is what kept happening over and over and over. A higher self would tell me to do something, and I couldn't understand why I was doing it at the time. But then after I did it, and after I saw the reality unfold, then the wisdom of of why I did what I did would usually take place. Sometimes I could understand, but most of the time I couldn't. And so that's kind of what the relationship is like in a way, except it's really you up there flying as well as down there at the same time. And the actual connection with higher self has very subtle aspects which I'm not real good at teaching and trying to understand right now. And it has to do with things like self-esteem and being able to believe in yourself, truthfulness, trusting, very subtle aspects that I'm trying to identify and trying to understand so that I can communicate, and it's not one of my great communication skills. You have to believe in yourself here on earth, and that you are a divine being, that you are connected to God and have purpose and meaning in all of this world, that you're not just an accident, and that you're not important or anything else like this. We were talking about loving yourself. These kinds of things are all components that have to come together before the connection with higher self can truly take place. And this is, like I'm trying to say, this is what I'm trying to understand so that I can not only put it into words, but to bring these components together in someone that's before me, beside myself. It just happened with me. I mean, it just appeared to just happen. I didn't seem to do anything to make it happen. And so some people have no problems with this, and others do. And again, this is what I'm studying, what this is about. I think there's people here that probably know more than me about this. What I might do right now is describe a technique that was given to me in terms of how to make this connection, and then I might ask someone else to come up here in a little bit and talk about this, so maybe they can help you. But I think I'll give this technique first. The technique that I was given is just a technique. There's other ones, there's other ways. But this is more or less the way I did it. And it has to do with, first of all, you would get a pencil and paper. In fact, you need one right now to write this down, to write down what I'm about to say. You can try this, and it does seem to work for certain people, and I think what it is, it works for the people that are ready. If you're not ready, and it may not work right away. First thing is that you would go into the Christ consciousness. First of all, before you ever even begin, you are to write down on this piece of paper now a question. Excuse me. Write down a question to your higher self. We're talking about like a polarity here now, as though you were two-ness, though it's really oneness. Okay, but in the beginning, it is a two-ness, and so you write down on this paper a question that you're going to ask to yourself when you make this connection with yourself. And the question would be something along this line. Another can tell you exactly. You need to write it down in your own words. And that is, you're going to ask your own self what it is you can do that would be an act, a physical act you can do in this world that would, first of all, be something that would be spiritually healthy for you, that would be something that would be good for your spiritual evolution. And second of all, by the very act of doing this thing, would demonstrate to you or to prove to your heart that you have made connection with your higher self. You're testing higher self. You're asking it to give you something to test. Okay? So you write this question down of how you want to put it in your own words. And you put it on a piece of paper, and you put the pencil right down on the floor or wherever you're on the table, where you are when you're going to do the meditation. And then you sit down and you do this meditation. Now I suggest that you wait about 2 weeks so that you do this meditation till you get to the place, to the first 14 breaths, that you get to the place where you're comfortable with it and you're familiar with the exercise, so you don't have to really think about it. You know how to ride the bicycle and you're not having to figure out where everything is, and you know how to do it, the mechanics of it. And then when you figure you're ready, you go in, you sit down, and get somewhere where you have turned off your telephone, you've locked your doors, no one's going to interfere with you, and all these kinds of things, because those kinds of things could come at the wrong moment for you. Just isolate yourself a little bit one time when you're ready. And begin the breathing and go until you get to the place of the 14th breath. Well, we need air in this place. And when I start yawning like this, I know that it's my little barometer. Or whatever it is, I know where there's no oxygen. You get to this place where you're at the 14th breath, and then get real relaxed, follow your breath, and follow your breath really, really deeply. Go deep, deep, deep into the stillness of who you are. And you just go deep, deep, deep within your beingness to the place where it's very, very still. And you've got this flow moving through you. You don't have to think. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to image anything. You don't have to be anything. You just are. And if you stay long enough in there, you won't even be aware of your body or anything. You'll just be a little spirit. And what's happening is you're breathing fourth dimensionally. And when you get that still in that breathing, you're going to raise your consciousness very slowly to a very high level of fourth dimension. Well, not high compared to what's possible, but higher compared to where you are now. You'll be breathing, you'll be raising your frequency to a fourth dimensional frequency, which will make it very easy from that place to connect with higher self. It would be a lot, you could do it in a safe way, or a fur's meat market or something, but it would be a little harder there than it would be in this real quiet place. And so once you get there and you stay there for a while and you feel like it's right and you feel like you've reached and your heart is open as much as you can, then with as much sincerity as you can, ask your higher self to come down to you, to come into your presence where you are so that you can feel this higher aspect of yourself, either in or around you. You invoke it. You ask it to come in. Now the next thing that happens, assuming you are ready, is something that I can't say what will be, because it could be almost anything. Higher self can come into you or come to you, and that experience could be almost anything at all. It's as limited as your imagination. And it's probably tied to something that you have determined a long time ago already. Higher self may come in, and when it comes in, and you could experience it in just about any conceivable way. For me, it was two spheres of light. For my wife, it was these 10-foot tall angels. I feel better now. I think I'll just hold this. It might make another one. That was my mantra for a long time. Orange, orange, orange. Sun-kissed.
You want 23.
So it might be, like I said, for me it was 2 spheres of light, and for my wife it's these big angels. You might not be visual. It may just come into you as you might just feel a presence come in, and you know. It might just be a knowing. You might hear something, a voice may come in and start talking to you. Or almost anything can happen. It just may be lights, it may be anything, it may be nothing at all, and there's just this feeling that comes in that has meaning to you. It may be that you're sitting there and your hand picks up the pencil and just starts writing, and you're wondering what's going on, because it's just automatically doing it. It could be almost anything at all. But the important part of this, what I'm trying to say here is that once you get, assuming that you get a communication of some sort, which again could take any kind of form imaginable, but once you get the meaning of what it means, you get it, whatever it is. A series of geometrical forms flashes across you, and you go, oh, okay, I understand. And you get the message. The next thing to do is to take all of your fingers, all 10 fingers, assuming you're down low on the ground, and put them on the ground. Take your 10 fingers like this. If you're sitting down on the ground, and put them down like this. This is the best thing if you're low to the ground. What this will do is ground you, literally, and it'll make you come out of the meditation extremely rapid. You can just open your eyes and be here. I don't know, have you ever done this? You can be really deep. You could be in for an hour, and you touch your fingers to the ground, and you can just open your eyes instantly, and you're there. It's real similar to, have you ever been driving a car and you start getting really sleepy? And you know how you start getting sleepy and sleepy, and you can't stop? And you just can't stop. You know how to stop that? Take your finger and touch, you know, what's that bump called? Right underneath the medulla, take your finger and make a little pressure. You'll go boing, and you'll be wide awake. It doesn't matter. The pressure on that point. This one. Well, that's getting close because you're doing the same thing. There's a place there. If you just press on it, you'll instantly wake up. And as long as you got your finger there, you can drive wide awake. Wide awake. You take it away, and after about 20 minutes, you start getting sleepy again. You go fix yourself. But same kind of thing. You put your hands down, and it'll just bring you right back. Now, getting back fast is important because I'll explain in a moment. You got this message. As soon as you get your message, you just say thank you, goodbye, and put your hands down, come right out, and without thinking about the message or pondering it or anything else, pick up your pen and write down the message and get the whole message onto the paper. Don't discuss it with yourself. Don't think about any of the words. Just get the whole thing on there and put the last period on there. It's very important that in the initial stages you do this as fast as possible. It's almost critical. The reason is because the biggest problem initially with communication, interdimensional communication, is with the lower dimensional level aspect. Here's the communication, and then changes it. Because the ego gets in there and says, no, I'm not going to do that. And so it just changes something, and then by the time you get down, you get something else. And so this is real important that you get it on there as fast as possible. Get it written down so you can't change it. And so you get it on there, and then, after you get it down, then you can pick it up and read it. Then you can think about it all you want. First thing I've got to say, and this is almost certainly will not occur. The likelihood of it is just about zero, but I must say it because there is a slim chance. If the message tells you to do something that you believe is morally wrong, you did not, repeat, did not get higher self. Take the message, burn it, and wait a while, like a month or something, and meditate deeper, because you didn't get higher self. I don't know what happened. It's your ego. It's something else. Because your higher self is you, and is a very pure aspect of you, and it's not going to do anything like that. It won't. It just simply won't. And not even to test you or anything else. It's not going to do that. Definitely in early stages. And so, but that, assuming that did not happen, you just got this message. Okay, you read the message. You get to about the 71st one, you know. There's the one I want. That's not it. You do it. And I've been following this for a really long time, and though there's different opinions on this, it has served me very well in this way. This is my way of doing it. Now, you may have a slightly different way of working with your higher self, and that's okay. I'm not saying that the way that I'm telling you is the only way. There's lots of ways, lots and lots of ways of working with this energy. Now, the higher self may tell you to do something like, I don't know. Well, it's like, let me think of one. You know this disc that you see sitting here? The higher self told me, okay, it's time for you to go study sound. And I had to study sound relative to the chakras. And I said, what do I do? They said, go for a walk in the forest. Okay, what's going for a walk in the forest got to do with studying sound, you know? So I go for a walk in the forest. And I walk in the forest, and I walk for about 2 or 3 miles, just walk and wonder why the heck I'm walking in this forest. And I walk up to a tree, and out in the middle of nowhere, this disc and another one about that big are leaned up against the tree. Sitting there. And I go, wonder what these are. And I took them home, and I found that by striking this thing, and the way the sound, which is a counter-rotating field going this way, and a counter-rotating field going this way, that I was able to explore how counter-rotating field sounds affect chakras. And I studied it for a long, long, long time. I ended up putting a pulley on this thing, and was able to raise it and put it at different chakras and strike it. And it was a great. I learned a whole lot. It was a real important lesson for me. The one that I have used several times, they've given me certain ones to say, and I don't really know why I'm supposed to. There's so many other ones, but I keep using the ones they told me to say, so I kind of go along by what they tell me to do. The other one was this guy from Japan who has a form of automatic writing. He goes into a trance and his automatic writing comes out. But the writing itself, when you look at it, is not a language that's on this planet. So it looks like something he made up. It doesn't exist on anywhere. But he can read it. And he knows what it's a language. Nobody else can read it, but he can read it. And he reads it, and it tells him what to do, and where to go, and what to do in his world, in his life. What his guidance, it tells him his direction. And in one of these things, I got to know this person, that's why I know. In one of these things, it told him to go to Canada, to Vancouver, Canada, to a very specific street corner on a certain day at a certain time and stand there. This guy was very dedicated. He bought a ticket from Japan, flew to Canada, went to the street corner, and stood there and waited. In the meantime, I had done a real similar thing. The angels had given me an address. They had given me an address, which was 111-444 4th Avenue in Vancouver, and told me to go there. And I did go there, and they said that I would meet a man, David Livingstone, which I did, which I think I told that story in the other videos. And I did go there, and I ended up in the school, which was called Alpha and Omega Order of Melchizedek. And while I was at this school, which was a school to teach or learn how to convert negative energy into positive energy on a planetary level, one of my trainings were that David let me witness this thing. And David's sitting there and he says, oh, this guy is down on such and such street now. He's there. He's just sitting there and he says, he's there now. So he tells this other person to go down and get him. So this guy drives down, goes up to the street, and here's this little Japanese guy sitting there that had been told to stand there. And he goes up to him and he says, would you come with me? And he goes, okay. And he gets in the car and he takes him over to where I was on this place over there and brings him up into this room. And David comes into him and says, why are you here? What led you here? And he could speak English. And he's sort of. And he said that his writing told him to come here, or to come to that place. And David says, can I see your writing? And so he showed it to him. David looks at it. Okay. And he says, would you wait here just a moment? I'll be back in a minute. And so David leaves. So I wait here with this guy. And a little while later, this young woman comes in. There was over 400 people in this group, so it was, I didn't even know everybody in the group. This woman comes in, and she puts an easel up like this, only it has a thing, a piece of cloth over the top of it, sets it down, and walks out. And we wait around for a little while, and pretty soon David comes in with 4 other people who come in and stand there quietly. 2 were on either side of the easel. I was in here, David was here, and this little Japanese guy was right here. And David, I don't remember exactly the conversation at this point. David said something to him, something I don't remember, and then he lifted the cloth off, and on there was this guy's writing all over it, and it said something to him like, I mean, I couldn't read it, but whatever it was, his smile went about that big. It said something to him, you are now home, or something like this, and da 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 like that. And come to find out, the other 4 people that were sitting there, who were all different nationalities from 4 different countries from around the world, also had the same exact writing, the same exact situation in their life. And so they were the ones that wrote that on the board to him. And at which point, he just went ecstatic. I mean, I can't tell you whether the guy just started crying and bawling and everything else like that. I mean, he was like, he had met 4 more people that were from him, that were from him. And this was like a very, very powerful experience for him. And it was a training for me to watch this took place. I had a lot of trainings like this, but this was one of them. And so, starting all the way back from when he was just getting that transmission, the writing that said, go to Canada, stand on a street corner on a certain day. If you got a transmission that said, go to Japan, stand on there at a certain day at a certain time, would you have the courage to do it? This is what you're being asked. It became loud and clear. What if it came quiet and foggy? Well, this is really what it comes down to. If you've got the guts to do this stuff, it takes a lot. And maybe you don't right now. Maybe you're not really ready. And in which case, you probably won't make connection with higher self.
Well, we all made it here.
Yeah, you got a guidance on one level for sure to get this far. All I'm saying is if you don't make it right now, hang in there, because you will. You definitely will. But you will be faced with this thing of having to somewhat give up your life and allow something greater to enter in. And what I mean is your mundane life, which may be, whatever you're doing right now may, another way to say it, whatever you're doing right now may change dramatically after that. And your life may change incredibly. And so I've had this, oh man, so many
Well, I think Auroria's point is really beautiful. I'd love to see a show of hands about how many people feel like they either gave up something or really sort of went into the grave or something.
Well, okay, let me ask this question. How many people here right now feel that you're already connected with your higher self? All right. Well, you see, I've asked this question before in other classes, and I usually only get maybe 5 to 10 people.
Wow.
So this is a very different. This is a much higher level class. This is a lot of people.
Barbara, I suggest in addition to some of the information that's coming in is to shift the word from self to self.
Selves?
Connection to higher self.
Well, okay. In terms of what you're just saying there, from self to selves, like I said, there's a higher self to a higher self to a higher self. What this is a process. It's an ongoing process. This is what I've discovered. What I found in the first part is that higher self, single, came in, these two spheres, and I began to follow this. And I followed it by writing it down. I have a journal where I wrote down everything they said for years and years and years. And then at one point, I discovered that there was a change occurring in me, and higher self began to come to me less and less and less. And I didn't see it or see them or myself, however you want to say it, as often. And then about a year ago, there was a third higher self, third angel, which was a gold angel or a gold sphere, that was sometimes there and was sometimes not there, but usually not. When I asked what these other two entities were, one said it was the spirit of the earth and the other the spirit of the sun, and that they were not, but that they were me. There was a poem that came out at one point right after that I am the earth, I am the sun, and yet I'm really neither one. And about a year ago, I started to do a workshop in the San Juan Islands, I think it was, and the gold sphere came in, and it just came over me, and just came down into me, and I knew at that moment that something had changed. I wasn't quite sure exactly what had happened, because I was in the middle of a workshop, and I was, in my own little self going, I know something's different here. And since then, I've discovered that that all I can call it is a knowingness has come over me. There's no more a polarity or asking a question and receiving an answer. It's not even, there's not even an internal asking of a question anymore. It's just, I just simply know that what I'm doing is exactly right. Without I can't explain it exactly. It's just there's just this knowing that comes over, and I can see that this whole thing is just a process. It's more to it. So what's now happened, I believe, another way of interpreting this is that the higher self that I had been communicating with has come in, and the level that extends out into the higher selves, like she's trying to say, has been opened. And so now it is a different form of higher level communication that doesn't require the polarity aspect of what was before. And I assume that at some point, if that's true, then if there are selves to selves, then at some point something else will come in, and an even greater level will extend into myself. Though I can't at this moment imagine what that is. And when that came in, yeah, there was. It felt very much like a light extended around me. My sensation of breathing changed, and I don't know. I felt different. I felt more self-assured, which I thought I was, but I even felt more so. than ever before, though not instantly, over a period of time. It isn't like some kind of real powerful sensation, but it was a very, very clear thing that took place.
There are voices that people hear and automatic writing that people participate in that sometimes originates with entities that are not people's higher selves.
Absolutely.
Could you speak to the different feelings that people would experience in their heart chakra or other centers based on the source of the information and the degree to which people are shielded from that sort of thing in the state that you are suggesting people get into before they attempt this?
This is the key to, or you see, the Merkaba and the Christ sphere being that's at the core inside of it is since the Merkaba is the pattern that created the universe. When we created this universe on this pattern, we used the pattern to step into the experience, or the Merkaba to get into it, and it's also the doorway to get out of it. It is also, we set this up in such a way that the Merkaba is also the protection field unparalleled. Once you're in your Merkaba, or even in the Christ consciousness breathing, it's more than a law. I don't know how to say this. The outside influences, no matter how great or how small, cannot influence you unless you allow them to. And so the purpose of waiting until you get into the breathing in the sphere, the golden sphere of light, is that your intention then is that only your higher self, in other words, you're invoking your higher self to come in, no other, and no other will or can. The only exception would be is if that person is running some kind of program in them saying that there's got some kind of low-level program going on and saying, only my higher self and maybe Joe over here, or something like that, because it's going to respond to that. But so you've got to be very, very clear and say, only my higher self, I'm invoking only that, nothing else. And as long as you do that, you won't get anything else. Now, without this golden sphere, if you're just sitting down and doing meditation, and you're asking for that, you might get just about anything, especially with automatic writing or things like this. It could be, which might be benevolent to you, and it might not. That's amounting to channeling, and you'll know because you'll feel this feeling come in if you're sensitive in the back of your head. Will come in and will not, and something actually enters into you, and it is not. It's not you, it's something else. Though it is you ultimately. It's not what you're attempting to do. But if you're in that sphere, you don't have to have any fear or worries. You won't be harmed and you won't be intruded upon. Not that they might not try. An outside influence may try, but it won't. They won't be able to reach through. It just won't. And once you hit the Merkaba field, then the protection is just absolute. I mean, there's just nothing. There's no way. There's nothing. But I don't think that you're going to have any problems with reaching higher self in this way. I don't anticipate that, and I don't think there will be one. For lots of reasons. Because of the situation that's developed around the earth, because of the unique cooperation between the dark and the light brotherhoods, and because of the timing that we're at right now and everything else. All of this should move very easily, and I don't really anticipate any kind of problems at all. Don't be afraid. Okay, where's the mic?
It seems. Is this on?
Yeah.
It seems that this knowingness is about not being afraid of becoming God, because the whole Lucifer rebellion was about breaking the laws of thinking that there's something higher than God and then causing a separation. And the Christ consciousness is about being the Son of God or some aspect of God and then struggling to get back to God. But everything that's happening now of acceleration and all that is going into that state like of knowingness where it's really natural to be God, to be God, not one person God over anybody else, but not putting God above or below or putting anything else above or below. So it's like that, it seems like that oneness, that experience of oneness where there's not even a separation between a higher and a lower self is that experience. And we all just have to get used to not being afraid of that or thinking that there's something wrong with that.
I was going to say the same. Because when you say, I want to talk to my higher self, you're creating a duality. And we know that duality is illusion.
But see, I'm assuming, and most of you are already here, but if there's someone that's already in duality, it offers a starting point
But
for
you
process.
have to lead them towards the light, and the light is truth. You're the teacher.
No, I hear what you're saying. This is just a technique, like I said. There are other ways of thinking about this and other ways to approach this. It's not the only way. And like I have said already, this is one of the weaker areas that I am able to communicate in. This, however, this is what I'm really offering is more or less the process that I went through. This is what happened to me. And I began to follow this, and what I'm seeing is that was the very first thing the angel said, the very first thing that came in. I saw something separate from me, and it looked at me and said, "We are not separate from you. We are you." And I didn't understand it, and so I had to go through an understanding process of how that could be, how something outside of myself could be actually me. And it took many years of understanding, and I'm still getting more and more understanding through this very process, and different levels of what I call communication within myself. And so now it's to a whole different place, and I have a feeling that is only a step along the way, or interpretation of what's possible, or fusion within oneself to going across the spectrum of the dimensional levels. And but there's lots of other ways of perceiving that, and I honor any that brings unity and brings people into oneness. I've studied enough of the other religions to know and understand what you're saying, but that isn't what happened to me. And so I have to come from experience, and that's what I'm coming from. Yeah.
Two things. One was about following directions, and this goes way back to the 60s when I was in India for 3 years, and I was told that I had to learn to follow directions even if I was in chaos equal to the Calcutta train station, which is considerable, that you really have to hear your inner guidance and do what they tell you to do. And the other thing was about writing, because I remember when I first started writing, I would be writing with my eyes closed, so that when I went to read it, it was such a mess that it would be hard to read, and then I learned to open my eyes. But it's like dictation. If you don't get it right, they stop. And they'll go back, or they'll wait for you, or they'll give you a word that you don't even know the meaning of it. And it's sort of like it won't go on until you get what it was they were trying to give you. So that it may not be that you have to stop and write. You may be able to just write as you sit in meditation.
I hear that, but what's being expressed here in various ways is that there are lots and lots of ways of doing this.
Yeah. I'm just saying that this is one way, and that might happen too.
Yeah.
That it may be that it's a continuous flow, that you don't wait to come out of meditation, that you stay in meditation. And
Well, yeah,
this
is what my wife used to do. She would look at the angels and dictate directly as they would speak.
And now what it is, it's like sometimes I get told to do things that don't make any sense at all, but they just said, we have to know that you'll follow what we tell you. I mean, things that don't seem to matter at all, like which way you're going to go somewhere. You know, it's almost like you're always being tested.
You know what? I would like Dawn to speak about this, if she would. Would you talk?
About this particular point?
No, about your viewpoint on. You have a particular viewpoint which I found pretty interesting.
Well, with the work that I do, I feel that there's two elements. We can divide it into two elements. One is that there's the relative third-dimensional element where people feel a lot of self-hatred and a lot of confusion and lack of trust in themselves. And then there's the past life element, which has to do more with perhaps fear of taking responsibility again because we've been harmed in the past or something. That's one reason why people will shut it off from a past life. Another reason from a past life is perhaps that there's been a mistake you made when you were following your inner guidance or something. It looks like you've made a mistake. So what I do is I try to help a person first to get in touch with their own confidence in themselves, their own love and belief in themselves and trust in their own feelings. So many people I find just do not feel confident in feeling what they're feeling and in believing their own guidance for changing jobs or changing living environments or something. And until we get to a place where we really learn to accept and understand what it is that's going on there, feel what we're feeling, allow that to come out, allow ourselves to look at it and acknowledge, I've been hurt. This doesn't feel good to me. This does feel good to me. This is on a totally third-dimensional level. And because of so many people, I'm sure that the other therapists in the room would agree with me that more than 80% of my clients have been abused very seriously as children. We do terrible things to our children, and we've all carried those memories into our adulthood. And just being able to say no, or just being able to say stop, is very difficult. So what I work to do is to get a person to acknowledge what they're feeling in their heart, whatever that is. What is it you're really feeling down deep? What is it you enjoy? What is it that's frightening to you? And then once we get that established, then we can go more deeply and see what's causing the fear from the past. What did you come in with? Why did you create this violation with this person? What's the inner message? What is it that you feel you failed so miserably at that you're not willing at this point to take back the reins of your own dominion? So that's the way that I work. It's mostly starting with that inner trust and inner love. I think self-love is the basis of everything, because otherwise what you get from your higher self, if you don't love yourself, then your higher self simply becomes another authority in your life, which is imposing upon you instead of blending with this loving. The higher self connection, in my experience, should be one of total unbounded love. It's not, even though we may get information that's contrary, like Drunvalo was saying, walking through the forest with our canoe, that seems contrary to our life path. It's always done in a loving way. It's never done in a, at least in my experience, it's never done in a way that's that feels abusive to us, and it doesn't come through as a dictate to us that is very rude and intrusive, the way that we might have experienced from childhood. Loving ourselves and trusting ourselves first, understanding what we're feeling, that opens the door to the deeper understanding and deeper connection with the higher self. So many times I have people that have perhaps been involved in, some of them very serious, people that have been involved in drug dealing, or I've had several clients who've actually committed murder, and they come in really wanting to grow. And how can they connect with higher self when they hate themselves so much, when they really feel like they've erred? Some of them feel like they've erred simply because the programming of their childhood, their parents have made them feel like they're wrong. The concept of shame, that I am wrong, who I am, what I think, what I feel is wrong. so getting people to a point of trusting what they feel, believing in themselves, saying, yes, that feels good to me, this is what I need to do for me. That's your first step, and then the rest comes beyond that. Then you can go and work with your past lives. Then you can go and clear up whatever other interference is in the way, the fears that might be buried or might be subconscious, the kinds of things that...
let me just say one more thing. The thing about the higher self, there's a lot of people here, there's a lot of information here, and for those of you who don't quite understand, try to communicate with other people and get other ideas about it. But it is very, very important, because as we move into the kinds of rapid changes that we're about to go into, you've got to be able to have confidence in yourself, to believe in yourself and know that you can get the information from within yourself and not go desperately looking outside, because you're not going to be able to get it outside. It's going to have to come from within here. And so only once you have that inner guidance, then the higher self will say, okay, now you're ready to use the Merkaba. Because until you get that, you're not really ready to use the Merkaba. Yes. We don't have it. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I'm going to have time for questions right at the moment.
This is just following guidance to mention 2 points related to attuning with our highness and accepting the reality of who we are. That actually the movement is not a straight line of going from one point to another, that it's a spiral, which would be in conjunction with all that you've taught us, and that whatever has been healed on one level could very well reoccur on another level with the response of, oh, I thought I healed that, when in reality it's showing up again to be exposed to a new dimension of whatever it is. And then so forth we continue on, just to mention the spiral movement. And the other aspect has to do with, I've worked with children who have been labeled as learning disabled or who are not quote-unquote intelligent, and watched how they have gone way beyond the gifted classes in their testing, just instantaneously in a very short time without even going through any of the levels. They've just all of a sudden had instant knowing, and it had to do with the opening of the heart.
We have two last areas to cover that I can think of. And the first one has to do with healing, and the last one has to do with the actual transition across to the other dimensional levels, and some aspects that you need to know about that. There's some very important things you need to know about that transition over into the other dimensional levels. We've got about an hour and a half, so we're going to go for it. Should do it. Okay, this first subject of healing. I mentioned already what my feelings were on, as far as technique goes, that we use technique, I think, more as a vehicle of communication between each other to communicate, but that that healing has to do with love, and that if you're healing yourself, that it's a matter of being centered and being in love with yourself. And if you are to assist in someone else healing themselves, that it's love that you're giving to that person that they're feeling that's allowing them to heal themselves. And any technique that we use is really secondary and of very little importance other than that. It's kind of the same thing that I'm saying about the workshop. You know, you can talk about technique, which is the Merkaba, which is perhaps important for what we're doing, but the Merkaba won't work without the love. And it's a similar kind of thing with my healing. These are my concepts on healing, okay? I'm not saying this is the end final word on healing in the universe. This is just, I'm just giving you my ideas that I've learned over a long time. So I'll tell you, with that in mind, I'll tell you how it all kind of started for me. And going way, way back 20-something years ago, my wife and I were, before the angels had come in or anything else, we were trying to understand ourselves and what the whole thing was all about. And we were using the technique of hypnosis to do this with. And we were learning a lot of things. I mean, my wife was learning how to lift. We were lifting out of our bodies and flying around the rooms and having a good old time and thinking this is the most incredible thing we'd ever learned. You know? And I mean, she was found out she could go down to the library and go in and read books and come back and those kinds of things, astral projection type stuff. And we started learning about some of the other dimensional levels by actually going there and looking around, this kind of thing. One day I left a pan, a cast iron pan, sitting on the stove. You know, I didn't leave it there. I purposely put it there. I don't know if you ever cook in cast iron pans. Not too many people do these days, but I do. And you dry them off so they don't rust by heating them up. And the only thing is, I did it and I forgot it was there, and I went outside. And it probably went through the smoking one and everything else like that, because it was like an hour later I came back. And I remember I was over at one end of the room, and my wife came in and went over and just picked up this pan, which was orange, you know, and picked it up in her left hand and moved it about that far before she realized that it registered that the pan was melting her hand. She just dropped this thing, and I went over to her, you know, and I looked at her hand, and it was just like rapidly going through. It was just, I mean, she had really done something pretty intense to her hand. And I remember sitting there. At first, I felt helpless, and then I remembered this connection, this new opening that we'd had with hypnosis, and this is all taking place in about 30 seconds or something like that, and just something took over, and I just knew, and I put her into a trance, which we'd already worked that stuff out, so it was like just like that. It didn't have to go through a lot, and I just told her, though I don't know if I really believed it at the moment, because I don't think I really did, but the words that came out of my mouth to her were, your hand is healing itself and it's going to go right back to normal right now. And she had her eyes closed, so she didn't even see this. And I'm sitting there looking at it, and I watched her hand before my eyes go back to normal in about maybe a minute or less. Just totally back to normal, like nothing had happened at all. And I was changed forever in that moment. I suddenly got something very deep, that the body is just light, and that there's some kind of connection between what you think and what you feel. And I experimented on that with her a whole lot later, and time again, I was verified that it was really true, that I could, that when the mind believes something, the reality followed right behind. When the mind really believed it. In hypnosis, you can get into really believing things at a very deep level, and it was amazing. It really, it really worked. There was another time when my little daughter, her name was Elia Isha, and she fell 14 feet onto a concrete slab and cracked her head open. I can't tell you what that feels like from the adult point, let alone the baby point. And I had a store called the material plane. And and when this happened, my wife went running out of the store, and I just kicked everybody out of the store and closed the door, and went into one of the rooms and sat down and focused and started doing the breathing. By now I knew how to do the Merkaba. And I got into it, and I started breathing, and I just visualized a little baby there. And I had talked on the phone with the babysitter who had seen it, and it was a big crack, and there was blood and the whole thing. And I just kept visualizing that it was healing. It was healing. That was my technique to myself at that time. I just saw it going back to normal in the same kind of way that I saw that hand go back to normal. And in the meantime, my wife met the babysitter down at the hospital. Try it anyway. And the baby was on a table when she got there. And the doctor was sitting there and had been looking to it. There was blood all over, and it was starting to swell. And there was a very definite crack. And I believe the baby was probably unconscious also. And the doctor looked at it, examined it, all this other stuff like that, and went in to have it x-rayed. He wasn't going to do a thing until it was x-rayed. Went in there to have an x-ray done. They set the baby in there, lined up all the things, turned on the machine, and didn't come on. They did everything they could to fix it. The machine was just dead. And they went to they had to bring some kind of technician in to work on it.
Every time you move your hand, you said that. You need
I don't know if I can talk without my hands. It's Italian in this body. It's funny, so it's just sort of plays out in space out here. So they tried to fix it. They couldn't fix it. They kept going through it. Still couldn't fix it. It took them over an hour to fix it. And they wouldn't do anything with her until they took an x-ray. Just wouldn't do anything. And finally got the x-ray done. Finally the machine came on. And then they took the x-ray. Immediately the doctor comes in and looks at it, holds the x-ray up, and there's no crack. He looks at the x-ray. Of course, this is my wife is in there. He says, went over the baby, looks at the baby. There's no crack. It's not there. None. Like it didn't happen. And they didn't know how to even talk about it. I mean, she said he just sort of, like was kind of dumbfounded. And so he told her, anyway, he said, well, I don't know exactly what happened. I thought that I saw this, but I guess I didn't. And he said, but anyway, she has a concussion, and she will, it's a very bad concussion, and she will probably have a problem when she comes out of this. She probably won't be able to talk right or something else. And he was trying to prepare her for in case there was some kind of traumatic thing. And he's telling her all these things. She'd probably be, something might be wrong here after this, because this is pretty bad. And by the next day, I think it was, her head was swelled up like twice the size. It's like it was huge, 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 swollen up. It was really sad. And he then told us that it would be, I think he said, about a month before the healing would go down and before anything would get fixed in all of this. And meanwhile, I just, day and night, I just kept focusing and just kept focusing on this. And so did my wife. And in 3 days, all the healing went down. All the swelling went down to normal. She looked absolutely normal. And we managed to took her out of the hospital. The doctor could not, and he just said that was extraordinary. He kept going on, it's really amazing that she could do this, but he just kept saying it was very extraordinary that would happen so quick and all this stuff. But it went down, and then he kept saying, but she'll probably have problems, and all these kinds of things like that. The angel said that she was, at this point, completely healed, except emotionally. That she was physically and mentally healed, but her emotional body was still attached to the pain. And that we had to heal the pain, and that it was love. And so we just loved her like crazy. You know, for a long time, like a lot more than you normally would. We really loved her. Until finally they said that it was done, it was over, that she was 100% healed. And so this baby grew up to be, instead of being retarded, if the bump did anything, it seemed to have gone the other way around. Because I remember when she was, this happened when she was 18 months old. And when she was about maybe 4 years old, she was still really little, we bought a piano. My wife played the piano. And so, I wonder if I can come out here. I'm tied up here. She came out and played the piano one day. I bought this brand new piano, and my wife sat down and started playing the piano. And Elia was just watching her, and I was sitting there watching her. And Elia said she wanted to play the piano. So we let Elia go up there and sit and play the piano. And Elia sit down, and she kind of goes, dun, ding, dun, dun, ding, dun, 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 and all this. Like in about 30 seconds, this incredible music is coming out of this piano. And that's when I realized that this isn't no ordinary kid here. And by the time she had finished first grade, which is what, you're 6 years old? 5? Well, no, you start. She started at 5. I think I believe she was 6 when this was concluded, if I remember. By the time she was 6 years old, she had read all the books through the 6th grade and passed the courses according to Colorado State. All the way through the 6th grade, the whole thing, the whole package. So I don't think she's going to have a problem with her speech or anything like that. And I had many, many things like this occur in my life, one after another, with lots and lots of people. And I knew that healing is a matter of opening your heart and allowing it to be. Now there's another thing I need to say about it, which is very, very, very important. You have the right to heal yourself, and we have the right to heal our children. But we don't have the right to heal someone else. We don't have any right. It's illegal. It's against the law. You can't do it. In order to heal someone else, you have to get permission. And for me, that means I have to get permission from the person, number one, and once they say yes, then I have to what I do is I bring in their higher self, which is easy to do once you know that process, and I get permission from their higher self to make sure that this is for the greater good of that person, because you cannot determine that the healing of that person at this time is in the greatest good of that person. It may mean maybe 2 weeks from now it might be, but at this moment it may not be. There's no way to determine that from where we sit. And so you've got to get permission to shoot a beam of light across the room to heal someone, or do something of this kind of psychic nature. It's a no-no. You can't do this. Even though it may seem like it's a good thing, because you just don't know what is needed for that person. If I did get permission to heal that person, what I do, and maybe has nothing to do with what you do, I get their pranic flow moving first. I know it'll only go for a couple of days, but you can initiate someone else's flow moving just by seeing their field and breathing and timing your breathing to their fields and getting their pranic flow going. In many cases, in many things, that'll solve the problem with at least a lot of certain things, unless they're real deep things. But I always do that first, and then I bring in their higher self again, and I say, okay, what do you want me to do now? And I just listen. I don't go thinking in terms of, like a doctor, in terms of all the things I know about as what is best or what for those conditions or stuff, though I may be put in that position. But I just simply ask what it is that would help this person. And I've discovered that the higher selves of people sometimes give very unusual things. Things that you wouldn't consider healing, per se. I mean, many times it is things like herbs or crystals or something of this nature, some physical thing, but a lot of times it's other kinds of things. For example, which I'm not going to have time to talk about this one, but I sometimes do, and it's one where it was a dream that actually was the healing process for this person. I had this dream about this person, and by giving the dream to the person, which was the healing thing, it solved the problem with the person. And sometimes it may be things associated with color and things like this, where you give them a certain color to wear, or there's a lot of, I don't know, it could be anything. It could be things that you may not normally attribute to healing, but if you just listen real carefully, just listen, just get out of the way and listen, their higher self knows exactly what they need. And just do it. And you can see amazing results sometimes with very, very little things. Maybe it's just handing them a book. Who knows? Whatever it is, I can't really tell. But you got to just follow your heart on that. There are techniques that I have learned. If the higher self says that they need energy in one way or another, besides getting their own flow going, I may give them my own energy and project through my hands by putting my hands on them and projecting. What I do is I get my flow going and bring my flow from the. You have this inner sphere here, and you have that outer one. The inner one is where your super concentrated energy, prana, is, and so I may bring prana out from there and down. I've learned things like you don't bring things through you. I learned that one the hard way. It's better to, I got it real good on these prana flows. I don't even let them back up into me anymore, to make sure that it's only a one-way flow. I remember one time my wife had hay fever. She'd had it for about 20 years, since she was a kid. And when we were kind of learning on all this stuff, it's toward the beginning stages, she said, "Hey, let's get rid of this hay fever." And I said, "Okay." And I got a hold of it. I felt where it was, and I pulled it into my hand and up through here and out the top of my head. That seemed like the right thing to do. It's not the right thing to do. Because 15 minutes later, my wife was completely healed, and she's never had it since. Nothing, totally, not a drop, nothing. 15 minutes later, I got it. And then I never had hay fever my whole life. And my eyes started running, my nose started running, my son was going, "What is this?" You know. And I just got it, and I mean I got it bad, and I had it so bad I was going through 2 and 3 boxes of Kleenex a day, and I didn't know how to get rid of it. I mean this was a new experience. I pulled something in that I didn't know how to get out of me now, and so I remember there was one point, it went for 6 months, and I couldn't figure out how to get rid of it. And my life was ruined. I couldn't even work. I couldn't do anything. I was crying all the time. And so I finally went to the angels, and I said, "You got to help me on this one. I can't figure it out." And they said, "Okay." And they gave me a herbal cure, which really works, and it's worked on lots of other people. I know how to knock out hay fever now, or most other allergies. It's pretty easy, actually. And All right. All you do is take 3 days of your life aside, and you kick everybody out because nobody's going to want to be near you. Because this is a blood purifier, and all the heavy metals and all the toxins and everything will come out of your body in every conceivable way, from your skin to your mouth to your eyes. Everything is all going to come out. It's going to come out fast, so you'll get very weak. I've learned since then that this is a Navajo cure, which they say will cure anything. And I did watch a woman afterwards who had also got the cure from someone else who had cancer throughout her body. They gave her less than 30 days to live, and she completely knocked the cancer out of her body, and that was about 7 years ago. She's fine now. And I mean, she had it in her blood, and it was throughout everything. It was really going. What it is, it's something called chaparral. And there's a technique where you take chaparral, you take 6 cups of water, and you take a heaping tablespoon of cut licorice and put it into the water cold, and bring the water to a simmer, and simmer it for I'd say about 20 minutes or so, maybe even longer, 20-25 minutes, and then turn it off. And then you take a half a cup of chaparral leaf. And the thing is about chaparral is that chaparral is an oil that's in there, and it gets very, very weak after about 6 months. And almost all the chaparral that you buy from herbal, your health food stores, most of those herbs are about a year old. And they're all weak, just about. And the very best way you can do this is to go pick it fresh. It only grows in a couple places in the world, and one of them is in southern New Mexico, southern Arizona. Yeah.
Are you familiar with the Jason Winters tea?
No.
It's sort of like cleansing, blood cleansing tea, and the government recently took it off the market. Made them take the chaparral out of it. And because supposedly one person got toxic reaction. So
sure, you could die from taking chaparral. It's not the chaparral, it's the release of the toxins. And so it is the absolute most powerful toxin remover in the planet, just about. So you got to know what you're doing with it, I have to admit this. But chaparral is very, very powerful thing. So you can't buy chaparral anymore? Well, they can't. The entire southern half of the state of New Mexico is covered with it, so as far as the eye can see. So I want to see them cut that down. So anyway, you put a half a cup of chaparral, you turn the fire off, and you put a half a cup of chaparral in there, and let it steep just like you would tea, but you let it sit for 45 minutes. And then you start drinking this tea over all those 6 cups over the entire day. You just keep drinking it. And you fast during the whole time. What happens is you get very weak, and all these toxins just start pouring out of you. You know, if you are really toxined out, or you have something really, this is just hay fever I'm getting rid of. If you've got something really strong, then you probably would have to ask your higher self about exactly if that amount should be changed or something. I'm not really sure of that. But, and then the next morning, you make another one. You can have all the water you want. You drink lots of water. And you can also take lots of baths to open your pores up and keep letting the stuff come out. And also with sea salt in the baths. And lots of sea salt, like in a bath, maybe 3 cups at least, or more, of sea salt. You couldn't put too much, because it'll get saturated. And take maybe 3-4 hot, pretty relatively warm baths to really open up the pores, to pull all that stuff out. And you'll just get weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. And by the end of the 3rd day, you can hardly get out of bed, but it'll just keep coming out. And then when you go back again, it just you feel like somebody just lifted a giant veil off of your head. I didn't even realize how many veils have been, because of the toxins that act kind of like veils. They deaden your senses. And it's very powerful. But that's what they told me to do. I'd never even heard of chaparral before that.
Was it fresh chaparral used or dry?
I went and got fresh chaparral. They told me to go get fresh chaparral. Chaparral like if you can't buy it, then that's the way it goes. But chaparral is only good from all the people that since then I've studied a little bit, and it's only good for about 6 months. And what chaparral is also called creosote. It's creosote they put in bushes. It's actually a form of poison, but so you have to be careful. You wouldn't want to put too much of that in there.
Do you just drink the chaparral the first day of the fast, drink from second and third?
You just drink it all day long.
Every day?
Every day for 3 days. And however, this woman who I talked to after that, I found this other woman who I talked to, and she says, "Oh, that's how I cured myself." And I said, "Well, what did you do?" And she drank large amounts of it for a month. So.
So when you said half a cup,
measure the leaf, half a cup of leaf.
compress the leaf?
Just put it in there pretty loosely and measure.
Put any
Okay.
capsicum with it?
Huh?
Put any capsicum with it?
What?
Pepper, cayenne.
Oh, cayenne. No, not for this. If you're told to do something like that, this was one that was designed for what I was trying to do, and why the licorice was in there, I'm not sure. Yeah. Well, the licorice will cleanse half of your adrenal. It won't affect the other part. Yeah.
Can you use drops?
You can't find cut licorice?
Oh, you can get that in any health food store.
Any health food store. It's licorice root, chopped licorice root. It doesn't matter really. As long as it's approximately a heaping tablespoon. Okay, let's get off of that. That's too long. Anyway, so after you've listened to their higher self, you'll find out, and you can do the same thing with yourself. Whatever it is, if you'll just go in and listen to what it is that your higher self will tell you, it will give you the cure. The one thing that my higher aspect told me a long time ago was that if we only knew the nature of the reality, we would realize that we are never without, that we always have within reach everything we need. Always. Either within for knowledge or without physically. That you could be sick and sitting right next to a plant that may be the very thing that you need if you just open your eyes and listen. And I remember right after I got that lesson, I was with my wife was going, I don't know. She was one of these ones that were always challenging things all the time. I don't know. She says, we need a gas can right now. We don't have a gas can. She was going like this, and like that, because we needed this gas can for this car. And I was going. So we were, as she was saying this, we were walking down to this beach. We lived on this lake that was 2 miles around, and there was nobody the nearest neighbor was 2 miles away, and the next neighbor was about 4 miles from there. So we were all by ourselves out in the middle of the forest. And we were walking down this lake as we were talking. She goes, she says, I need a gas can, and there's no gas can. She goes, some things you don't have like that. And we walked down, we sat down on this rock, I remember, and we were just sitting there for a moment, and all of a sudden I looked over, and over this rock, about 20 feet away from me, was the most incredible gas can I've ever seen in my life. I mean, this thing was, I couldn't believe this thing. It was like brass. With this, I mean, it was incredible. It must have been like $100 gas can. And I said, there's one. It worked for about 2 days, and that was it. She was right back again. I remember we ran out of money. The angels told us never to work, that they would provide all the money for us. All we had to do was just to continue following our heart and doing what we're supposed to do, and everything would be taken care of. And so I had some money when I left there, so that was real easy to do. And we went and lived in this place out in the woods. And then we lived there for several months while I was sort of living on this money. And then the money started to run out. And as it started running out, my wife started getting more and more antsy all the time. You know, and it got to the place where she was starting to get downright belligerent toward me. And I said, but we said we're not supposed to work. I don't care, we need money. And we got down to $12 to my name. And the next day we had to make a car payment or something, or we'd lose the car. I don't remember. It was $180 I needed the next day. And she was just going nuts all day long and all night long. And we went to bed that night, and she was just pissed off at me and everything. And I was going, how can I, you know, because I was just wanting to, I didn't care what happened to me. That was the problem, you know. I mean, because I just wanted I wanted to follow this thing to the end, and wherever the end was, or where it starts the beginning or something, I don't know. But I wanted to keep going with it, and so we went to bed that night, all pissed off. And about midnight, and you got to realize, I am in the middle of nowhere. So I went to bed, and that night, about midnight, there's a knock on the door, and I get up and I walk in there, and here's this old friend that I hadn't seen for a long time, and he'd been trying to get to me for about 3 days. He didn't even know where I lived, so it was hard, and he finally found me about midnight. And I came in, and I wake up my wife, and we go into the kitchen, we sit down, and he says, you remember that money you gave me like 3 years ago or something like that? And I go, no. And he goes, well, I just wanted to tell you, saved my life and all this kind of stuff. And he takes about $3,000 and goes, and crash on the table and says, thank you. And my wife's sitting there going, like this. And he stays the night and he leaves the next morning. And $3,000 was a fair amount for us because we only lived in about, I don't know, just a couple hundred a month or something. It was that much. So we lived high in the hog for a while. And started living, and everything was fine, and boy, she didn't say a word for a long time. And then we started running out of money again. And we started going through the same thing all over again, and we got down to $16 this time. And the same thing the whole night before. Gotta get a job. And we go to bed all pissed off all over again. And I actually was laughing afterwards because it was almost the same minute. It was about midnight, about the same time again. Knock on the door again. Open the door. And this is somebody different. This goes all the way back to Berkeley, like a long time ago. I hadn't seen this person. And it says, I finally found you. I've been trying to find you. You remember that money you gave me? Yeah, I guess. I was very generous a lot of times. I used to give away cars and everything else because it always came back. I discovered that part of the... Remember, I heard about the karma and I tested it out, and it really works. I don't know if you know this or not, but when you give things away, you better get a big bucket because it's going to come back at you more than you give. It just is true. It just really is true. And so anyway, it wasn't quite 3,000, but it was about 1,800. Big cash pile. Thanks a lot. You know. Well, when that money ran out, she left me. kind of how it is. I've just been following it all along. I've always had problems with almost anybody that's tried to live with me. It's hard because I just refuse to go play by the rules, but they usually are. And I've always been fine. Everything's been just fine. More than fine. So anyway, I'll give another example of this, and then I think we have to go to the other one we do. The last example is the name of this person I put on that list. I'm saying this one because she wants to help other people, and this was a pretty good one. Actually, I'll say a real quickie one before. There's this lady named Diana Gazes who used to have a TV show in New York City called Gazes into the Future on closed, what do you call it, cable. Went out to a couple million people. And we were good friends for a long time. And one of the things, she quit for a while. She's now in England, setting up the same thing over there. But she, while she was in New York, one of the last things that she was filming right before she quit was this young boy who was, and this is all on video, this young boy who was, well, when he was a kid, he collected salamanders. He had jars and jars of salamanders. I don't know if you know what a salamander is, but salamander is weird because if you pull a tail off or you pull a leg off or something, it just grows another one. They don't know how it does it, but it does. It just grows another one. And so when he was about 11 years old, he lost his leg from somewhere between his hip and somewhere up in here. Lost one of his legs completely. And what I attribute it to is that the parents forgot to tell him that was only for salamanders. Because he grew another leg. He grew another one. And it's on, they videoed it. Once they started growing, they actually started recording it. And he grew this whole leg all the way down, all the way down. At the last hand, right at the end of the video when they were doing it, he's growing the toes on. And it's supposed to be impossible, but yeah, it's not. It's all what you believe. It's your belief patterns is what the thing is. This is where the real key comes into. It's what you believe can be possible, what you believe is true, and it's the limits that you put on yourself.
Maybe the salamander taught him how to believe in so much that he got magic from that as well.
Well, possibly, but more than likely, I think he just saw that as saw the salamander do it. And when I said that, people laughed, but I don't think he never was told. He never got the programming that wasn't possible.
I spoke to Diana because I was going to work with somebody with limb regeneration, and she said he was retarded. He was mildly retarded.
He was?
Mildly.
Oh, that's what did it. He was mildly retarded. So did she ever give you the video?
No, she said the kids in France. I don't know the name of it, but it's a really big institute, and they're documenting it, and they're trying to study how he's doing it and everything, and he was in France.
Thanks for that.
That's why
I was going to get in touch with you. Do you know where she is in England now?
I have her number at home.
I would like that if you give it to me. Speaking of her number, just a real quickie on Diana. I don't know if I said this in the last workshop, but I'll say it in this one anyway. We were doing that. She's a psychic. She teaches metal bending, take metal and melt it and all this kind of stuff with your mind. And she goes to executives and teaches them how to do this so that they can see this and apply it into their business somehow. And so she was in Hawaii and I was in New Mexico, and we were doing experiments back and forth psychically on healing. And we had set up this one pattern of healing where we were going to do it for 10 days. And I was going to do this particular thing every night for 10 days, and then I was supposed to call her, and we were going to compare notes of what happened. And on the third day, I decided not to do it without telling her. you know. And when I went to call her, she wasn't there. I couldn't get her. So I remember I went in and I said to the angels, she's not there, because I was doing this in conjunction with the angel. I said, well, she's not there, what do I do? And so they gave me the phone number. They said, call this number. So I called this number up, this 808 number, didn't know what it was, call it up, and Diana answers the phone. And I said, oh, hi, Diana. And she goes, Droombalo? And I get, yeah, how you doing? She goes, Droombalo? And I said, what's wrong? She says, Droombalo? I was just walking by this phone booth. She said it started ringing and she just felt pulled over to it. She still kids me about it all the time. Anyway, this lady, Doris Davison, was she was a woman in California, and she was in her 50s, and she had been in a wheelchair for 12 years. And she had polio, I think it was, and her legs were like little toothpicks. Couldn't even hardly move or anything. The doctors told her she would never walk ever again, which I believe is like execution, you know. I mean, you should never say that, because it takes away all hope, all possibility. This is why I think it's so difficult to heal the AIDS patients, because they all believe that there's no cure and no possibility. And so they all are going around with this thing saying there's no hope, you know. And it really reinforces it. It's hard to break a pattern when you've got that feeling going. Anyway, she picked up one of Katrina's books. It was Healing, Crystal Enlightenment, I think it was. Yeah, the first one, Crystal Enlightenment. And it said something in there. I don't know what it was that said it in there, but it triggered her, and she started thinking that maybe crystals would help her. And she got a hold of Katrina at the Crystal Academy in Taos, and they started talking. And in the course of the conversation, Katrina found out that this woman was a walk-in, and decided that it might be better if I talked to her than her for some reason. I don't know why they came to that conclusion. So this woman calls me up and says that she wanted to know if I could help her. So I got permission from her higher self. I asked her higher self, what do you want me to do? And all it said was, talk to her on the telephone, talk to her about her beliefs, about her belief patterns. Break her belief patterns. That's all the higher self said to do. Didn't say to send any medicines or anything like this. So I talked to her on the phone. We talked for like an hour once a week or so. And I just kept talking to her kind of like about the things that I'm talking about now, to try to convince her that what you believe is true, and just because you're in a situation that is supposedly helpless doesn't mean a thing. You can change it if you truly believe that you can. Remember what happened to the woman that touched Jesus' robe. She was healed. What was it that she had? Do you remember? Somebody remember?
A bleeding disease.
What?
She's been bleeding for
years.
And she was healed immediately. And he felt it, and he turned around and he said to her, your faith has healed thee. Right, well, you can be healed as fast as you can accept. That's what it really is. You want to be healed slow, you can be healed slow. If you want to be healed instantly, you can be healed instantly. It's all your faith and what your belief is. And so we talked to her for a long, I don't remember all the exact dates and all this stuff and everything, but I talked to her for a long time, and finally I got her to the place where she said, okay, I'm going to do it. And I mean, she had this deep conviction, I'm going to do it. I am going to heal myself. I'm going to do it. I don't care what they say, I'm going to do it. And so she went out, and got rid of her wheelchair, and got these special braces made all the way up her legs and hips, and got one of these 4-poster kind of things like this, and started walking around her house like this with great difficulty, and walked all around her house for that way for a long time, still talking on the phone. And she had her son that was helping her, who was in his 20s, I think. And she did that for a couple months or so, and then her legs got a little stronger, kind of. And she switched from, this is what I remember, it may not be exactly right, this is kind of how I remember what it was. She then switched from there to regular crutches and learned how to walk on regular crutches. Did that for a while, and then she went to, then she got different kinds of braces that didn't go all the way up from her hips, but went down further, down like here on down. Then she walked around that for another couple months or so, and then she got these other braces that just went from the bottom down to here. And she walked around for another couple months doing that, and then she got rid of the crutches and was able to walk around with these special braces, but with very slowly, with difficulty. Her son saw that and he left. Figured she's okay now, and took off and went into the Navy, I think it was, or one of the military things. She's left alone now, walking, barely able to walk, but walking around. She did this for a little while longer, until she got pretty good, and she went down to the motor vehicles and got a driver's license. And then she went back and sold her house. She went down and then bought a brand new RV, and she drove out to New Mexico and walked into one of my workshops. And we had stairs in this thing, about 4 of them, and she walked up and down the stairs and nobody helped her or anything, and she got back down all on her own. Didn't want anybody to help her. And then she went to work for Katrina as her secretary. I then didn't see her for about 8 or 9 more months. She just disappeared. I didn't see her. One day I'm walking down the street of Taos, New Mexico, and here comes this woman skipping down the street. She walks up to me, and I'm looking at the doors. She goes, "Look at me!" She says, "I am 100% healed. Totally normal. You would never guess. Totally normal legs, everything." She says, "I am 100% healed." And she skipped around a little bit and did a little jig and gave me a big hug. And just been a good friend ever since. She moved to back east. And I don't see her anymore. She sends me a postcard all the time. She sends me a Christmas card every year. But totally healed, 100%. of something supposedly impossible. All from just one thing, your belief patterns, nothing else. So is there any questions on this? I could keep going for a long time, but we've only got 45 minutes. Yeah.
Why do you not need to ask permission for healing your children? Aren't they souls of their own free will that may have their own ways of working things out that could be violated?
Yeah. If you feel that way, you should probably ask. I feel, for me, my feeling is that they're in my care. While they're in my care, then it's for me to take care of them, and that I have that right. But if you feel that in that way, then you should ask permission first. But I would only feel that way toward my own immediate children that I'm taking care of. I wouldn't feel that way if they were even older. But when they're just a little baby like that, I feel like it's, I don't know. I would ask the higher self what to do, but for me, I just felt like I had that permission. But I understand what you're saying. Yes. We have that.
When you ask the question, do you do it verbally or non-verbally? And that's one question. If you're in a healing session with someone and you're asking if
you ask the person verbally, right. You ask their higher self non-verbally.
Okay. What if they're comatose? I mean, you can't.
That's a different situation,
okay.
And if they are, a technique has been given to me for that situation. I'll give it to you, and this is what they told me to do, and I have had few experiences in this one. If someone's, you go along a road and they're unconscious, they've just been in an accident or something, you can't ask their permission, then you assume you've got it, and you ask their higher self to come in. And then you ask their higher self, what can I help this person? If you get permission from their higher self, they proceed. If you don't, then just help them and to be comfortable and take care of them, but don't work on any other level. Let them, even if it means letting them die, it's okay. It means that's what they're supposed to do. There is a technique, though, that if you do get permission, I know how you can keep a person that is unconscious alive indefinitely, without any machines or anything. And all you do is you see their crystalline field. You see, death is nothing but moving from the moving out of balance toward either the north or the south pole. If you move completely into either one of the poles, you die. And unconscious means that they're very close to one of those poles. They're way out of balance. It's a balance issue. And so if you see their tetrahedral field, and you then begin the breathing with my own field, but I time it to theirs so that my breathing is timed to their field. And you just begin doing the first 6 breaths, and which is the polarity balancing. And you just you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, come back to 1, and repeat it again. And you keep doing that to them. You keep that in there as long with their permission, your higher self permission. Then what happens is that person cannot die. They can't. You're keeping them from dying, and you have to. But the only thing is, you have to keep doing that until they go conscious. And then once they go conscious, then you switch to coming down with a tube and get their flow going, and that's usually all you have to do. However, it may not be more than just a few minutes or days. I mean, you may be more than one day. And when I was approached with that situation once, where I had to go, at the end of the day, I was still doing it, and I had to get some sleep, my higher self just had to program that I was going to continue doing it and go to sleep and then pick it up the next morning, and it works. And I put someone through 3 days that way, where the French hospital had thought they were dead so much they put them in a body bag and put them over in the corner. And we managed to bring them back and get them back out just from doing that for 3 days long. So it works.